Hi, welcome to episode 1 of DCTV, a brand new show from Distech Controls that deals with the issues of today, where we're going to discuss, debate, and educate our audience on all the issues regarding the modern day smart building control system. Our topic for today, episode 1, is open systems. What are they? Where do they come from? And why should you care? Helping me to dive deep into this topic today are Mitch Day from Distech and Joel Desiree from Distech, all the way in Montreal, Canada. Welcome, guys.
Thanks, Eric. Really excited to be here today.
Good to have you guys here, too. So first of all, guys, we're going to be talking about open systems. Give our audience a little bit of your background. Mitch, what about you? Where did you come from and how did you get here?
Sure. Yeah. I've been involved in building automation for 22 years now. When I come in and talk to people about it, I like to tell them, paint the picture. I spent the first part of my career as that guy sitting on a bucket with a hard hat, with a laptop typing in the space. Spent a lot of time in the buildings, in the trenches, really making this stuff work. I've been with Distech now for 3 years. I'm the regional sales manager for Florida and Georgia. And absolutely love being involved with this organization. It's been a great career path for me. I'm really excited to spend some time talking today.
Very cool. What about you, Joel? Tell our audience a little bit about you.
I start in technology, so I start 25 years ago in a startup. Then I move into industrial automation for 10 years, working for Schneider Electric. Then I move to Boston area, to Schneider Electric too. Up to 2015. Then I moved to Montreal, and I'm with Distech for 2 years now, and very happy to be with this very innovative company.
Very, very cool. Excellent. So it looks like I'm the old guy here. So I guess I'm going to have to sort of start off with story time and talk about open systems, where they came from and how they started.
Well, before we do that, Eric, I don't think it's fair. Why don't you tell us a little bit about where you come from?
I'm not allowed from the planetary thing to tell you what planet I'm from, but no, I've been in the business since 1980, and I worked for Honeywell for a while, and then I worked for a boiler control company, and then started working with Stromquist and Company, which is my dad founded the company, so I've been around for a while. And God, I don't feel like the oldest guy here, but it looks like I am. So when we talk about open system, I think it's important to sort of where did they come from and how did things get started with open systems. And to do that, I think we have to go back and talk about where building automation controls started in the first place. And I remember back when Jimmy Carter was president, and there was the first oil embargo, and energy costs went through the roof. And back then, computers were they weren't even mainstream. So bottom line, the idea of automating a control system, networking it together was a completely new concept. And really, Mitch and Joel, the only people that could do it were the big manufacturers. So your Honeywells, your Siemens, your Johnson Controls all developed the first connected systems, okay? And when they did that, they all developed their own protocol. It kind of made sense, right? So they had their own protocol because they were responsible for it, and all the protocols were different.
Well, just like computer manufacturers back in those times, everyone was innovating around new technology. They're all pouring money into R&D, and the safest way to get their return on investment on their R&D was to create their own little kingdoms, their own technology that they could control. And, and it made sense. It was a new technology. People were moving from the history of the way we'd always done temperature control with pneumatics, which were sort of an inherently open system. Anybody with the right mechanical skills could come in and help you make modifications to a pneumatic control system. And people were very successful in doing that. And the more these large companies looked and said, gosh, we want to take the power of computers and start applying them to this, they wanted to make sure that they could control their investment in that space.
Yeah. So in very short order, it didn't take people to figure out that the proper strategy was win on bid day and you own the customer forever, because the cost to change that was way too high. Yeah. But Joel, then kind of about 10, 15 years into it, things changed. Some people came out and they figured out that they could have control systems talk, which was sort of the very beginning of open systems. So talk about that, guys.
Yeah, from my perspective, we've all been talking about open systems for a long time, right? We everywhere I go, we talk about open systems, but I don't know that anyone really understands all of the hows and whys to how we got where we are and why it's important that we continue to push down that path of open systems.
And I think it's a good point. If you look to the different challenges that we are facing today, which is the price of energy, which is rising, the price of a square feet, which is rising too. And even though for the last 12 months with the pandemics, we don't know what will be the future, but we know for sure that we won't use the building in the same way. And if you are looking for a proprietary system, you will have to wait that the manufacturer provide you a complete system.
Mitch, then some independent people came out, started developing systems, which was good, but you were still sort of locked into whoever won on bid day won, that was your system from then on.
Well, Eric, we've all gotten used to business models that work that way. Have you ever gone into Best Buy and bought yourself an inkjet printer?
Oh, yeah.
Were you tricked?
Oh,
we weren't tricked. We knew what we're doing. We went in, we buy the $85 inkjet printer, and 2 or 3 weeks later, you printed out your 20th page and your ink cartridge is out, and now what are you going to do?
You're going to buy the $95 ink cartridge.
Absolutely. And that was just the business model, and we all kind of accepted that. Unfortunately, for a long time, that's been the business model around building automation systems. It's the idea that you get in how you can because then you have an ongoing revenue source. And that's because, from a technical perspective, ASHRAE comes out and says, if you put a building automation system in today, it needs to last at least 10, probably 15 years, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to get you on the first day because they know that they have a reason to continue to pursue you as a customer after that.
Well, that was then.
Yeah.
And then, when Tritium came along and they began to open protocols up, and I'll ask you guys to speak about open protocols because that's part of being open, right?
Yeah, of course.
Then things became a little bit more flexible. A little company called Tritium came along and they created a system that would actually allow different systems to talk a common language, right?
Of course.
So speak about, Joel, from your perspective, how did that change the game for you and in terms of this journey?
Change the game because it allows not to have to wait for manufacturer to provide new solution, but to think outside the box and to say, okay, I would like to have new services or new usage, and let's use the Tritium in order, I will say, to make this connection between the new usage and the current BMS that I have.
So it's creative flexibility, right? So you begin to get what they call open protocols, and guys, define an open protocol for people in the ones you see. Your controls talk BACnet, LAN's another one. There are several open protocols. Tell our audience what that's about.
From my perspective, an open protocol is something that you can comfortably use in an environment where your expectation is that most people ought to be able to speak to you in a free and open way. The big question for me, though, is to get at why did people create open protocols in the first place? Whose needs were they trying to meet, right? Because certainly they're not trying to meet the needs of the manufacturers who have their own little kingdoms and are perfectly happy. The intent, I believe, was to meet end user customers' needs, right? And the holy grail of all of this, the goal in the end, was always to provide a methodology that an end user customer, I'm a building owner and I bought this stuff and I want it to control my air conditioning and maybe I want it to control my security too, but I don't want to be stuck having to use the same guy for the next 15 years just because when I built my building, the mechanical contractor picked that guy because he was low bid. Right? That's a really terrible way to pick someone you're going to have a 15-year relationship with, is to let somebody else pick him because he was the cheapest guy on the block. Right?
So the protocols like BACnet and LAN were kind of agreed upon language, if you will. So maybe this brand's control speaks German, this one speaks French, and this one speaks Italian. Yep. And then BACnet and LAN and these things became common languages where these controllers could begin to talk together.
With the intent that maybe we would someday get to the point where it didn't matter who you bought your stuff from, because if we all spoke the same language, we'd be able to mix and match a little bit.
So the engineering community was really driving the open protocols.
Of course, because they're the ones that are supposed to be representing that end user customer's needs in the space.
Gotcha.
I'd say, Mitch, what is quite important is the total cost of ownership. Because with open protocol, it's much easier to find people that will be able to develop what you are doing because they are not stick to a specific manufacturer. So it's much easier to find people and so to develop exactly what you need as a owner or a tenant.
Yeah, so obviously open protocol, speaking an open protocol like BACnet or LAN is part of an open system, right? I mean, about being open.
Yep.
What other components going to be open? In other words, if somebody comes in and says, I'm open because I speak BACnet, does that mean that they're completely open?
Well, it's a funny question that you ask because it's always a moving target. It's always a moving target. And I'll get back to my analogy around the inkjet printer. You know, shortly after people started selling inkjet printers, somebody came along and said, well, I've got a refillable cartridge that you can use here, here, and here. And what's the first thing that the inkjet printer companies did? They said, well, we need to figure out a way to lock that down, right? Because that's what I would do if I was making inkjet printers. It's always a moving target around finding the right ways to meet the end goal of simply putting ownership of the system in the hands of the building owner themselves.
Yeah.
Right? Every piece of it needs to be in their hands.
So you want to give them ultimate flexibility. And I think the word that comes to mind, Joel, see if you agree with this, is choice, right? I mean, I think it... Yeah, choice.
Yeah.
So they have the choice, yes.
Interoperability. Interoperability is key because if you think about the building, you have to think about what's happened inside the building, but what happened outside the building. And so you have to interact with your environment. And so open protocols allows to do that, not only inside the building, but outside the building.
Very cool. All right, we're going to have our first quiz show segment of episode 1,
Great.
Which is, Mitch, Joel, my system speaks BACnet and LAN, but you can only buy it from one person. Are you open or not?
It's a good question. It's a good question because open is defined as how your engineer wrote your specification. I would say no.
You would say no. Yeah. Mitch says no. Joel?
Nope. No, neither.
Correct. Both you guys are correct because it eliminates one of the key components of open, which is choice. Yeah. Right? It might speak an open language, but if you only got one place or one contractor that can install it, the committee has said you are not open.
And it's terrible that we have to accept this. To me, it's like me leaving this filming today and I'm hungry and I want to stop and get a meal and I stop at Wendy's and that means I need to eat Wendy's for the rest of my life. That's a terrible place to be. I don't want to be there. I want choice.
I think I can live with that. But it's a good point. All right, question number 2. You guys are doing really well. My system is open, but I can, and I got multiple people that can install it, but I cannot get the same training for my people as a contractor can. Are you open?
What do you think, Joel?
I don't think so. I think training should be part of the openness, which means that you are open because everybody is able to install your system, is able to understand your system, and to complement your system.
And so if you get the same tools, same training,
Yep.
that's a component for being open in
What
our
if I'm
opinion.
willing to give you my tool, but I want to charge you $10,000 a year to have it?
You are
That's
still
open, right?
You are still open.
From our perspective, it's really, really important that those tools be freely and openly available, and
Yeah.
that we don't provide locks and gimmicks. And honestly, if you try and think about it, we can all come up with a million different ways that we can get in the way of a real open system. In the end, it is all about trying to restrict the choice of the person who owns it.
Yeah, and so I think it's a key component, and I think companies like Distech and most really valid companies, they're just going to compete. We'll do a better job with our product. We'll do a better job. We'll earn your business every day. Whereas I think if you're not open, you might get all that, but then again, you're kind of locked in because the cost to change can be kind of high. So open protocol, open tools, being able to buy it from multiple people are key components there. Okay, so that's it. So owners are really at choice now. They really are. They can get and part of open tools, you can get the best of breed, right? Because if I've got a truly open system, I can add the best of breed products. The best sensors can talk with the best controller, whatever. Agree or disagree?
That's even more important today. So Joelle and I were speaking last night, and we were talking about this. You talked about during the energy embargo, right? There was this big demand, this big explosion in technology that drove innovation in our space. And right now, we've got to the point where we're all pretty good at managing energy. You can have brand X, brand Y. We're pretty good at managing energy. We're pretty good at controlling the air conditioning and the lights and the things like that. But we are entering into a phase in technological development where it's about a lot more than just the lights and the HVAC, right? And so now we're starting to look at how important are open systems if I want to be able to talk to the electric vehicle chargers that are in my parking lot. What if I want to be able to talk to the photovoltaic array that's on the roof? What if I want to be able to talk to the kitchen systems that are running down in the commissary area? There are so many pieces to it that we're looking at, and it's really become obvious to me that buildings are no longer just the place that we go to work.
I want to ask Joelle about this because I think you got a good point. So your building is a brand. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I think it's very important. So more and more, especially with the millennium, and people want to work in a cool space, in a place that they would really like to go in. And especially if you think with the post-pandemic, you won't be obliged to go to work, which means that if you don't have an appealing place to work, why would you go to work?
Yeah,
it's a great point. I know before the pandemic, Joelle, one of the things that our clients were asking us, they were trying to figure out how can we make the building space appealing enough that people actually want to come in to work? Because even before the pandemic, a lot of the younger folks wanted to work from home anyway. So that was the big question, right? So open allows you to put all kinds of cool things in to entice them to work. And now maybe even more important is how can you have your building be safe to come back in, right? So now if you've got an open system, you can count the people coming in, maybe monitoring the air quality, things like that, correct?
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me, we talk about the pace of emerging technology. You and I both came in here today wearing masks, right? Could you have imagined a year ago that we were going to come in here wearing masks?
Only if we were going to hold the place up.
Right. It was never going to be that way. So if I have to assume that we're going to put a system in that's going to last 10 or 15 years, and I couldn't even have predicted a year ago that we would walk in here wearing masks, I have no idea what changes in society, changes in healthcare, changes in how we interact with each other is going to drive the future of buildings. But I know that if I put a proprietary system in, I vastly limit my options over the next 10 to 15 years as to what new technologies I can bring in to make that space. And what you said earlier about brand, that to me is it. A building is no longer just where you work. A building expresses to the public who you are as a company, how you want them to see how you see your employees and your products, and who you want to be to the rest of the world. Open systems provides that power to give people more choices in how they express their brand.
And I think this is part of the well-being too. So well-being, how well you are in the building, which is of course, I would say air conditioning, temperature, lighting, and so on. But it's not only that, is that you feel well in the building, that you feel safe, that you know that your building is healthy, and that the time you will spend will be a good time.
No, exactly. And I had the privilege last year of, I think it was 2 years ago, of covering a building that you guys were part of. A smart building was done in Washington, D.C. And you talk about, your brand, again, your company brand, because you guys had saved a ton of energy with this. The tenants in the building were part of the process. It was a completely open system. And, just the PR out of that, because you could tell by talking to the tenants who were involved, the pride they took in the fact that they were in a smart building. It was saving money. It was safe, and it was saving money. It was good for the environment. And, I'm not saying you can't do that on a proprietary system. There's some proprietary systems that are probably really good. I'm saying if you've got a proprietary system, you might be locked in. You don't have the choice. And again, we keep coming back to that word choice.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that building. I've been in that building a couple of times. There are lawyers and architects and all of these other people that are working there, but they all recognize the importance of that healthy, safe, trustworthy building.
Yeah. Well, Joel, I think it's important to realize that, owning commercial real estate is like any other business. Things are competitive, right? How do you differentiate your business from somebody else's? And they've shown statistics where people have an energy program in, like you had in the building in Washington, where it's visible. The clients are willing to pay more for rent, and they stay longer. So there's a really good business case for creating an open, smart building.
Yeah, and I would say that openness for me is linked to collaboration with other company. And we have a good example right now. We have a good customer which have a 10-story in a big building. And today they only use 20% of that. They want to keep it, but however, they don't want to clean all the story and so on. So with a collaborative with other company, we are able to know where people are sit. So when we have to clean, when we have to eat or to cool. And so, in fact, it decreases the OPEX. So it's a way, and if you have proprietary system, you cannot do that, at least not in a 12 months period.
Well, it makes sense economically. If you are locked into somebody and they can't change, we tend to, just by human nature, tend to maybe not treat them as well as we might treat somebody that we still have to work for. So part of open is you have to keep working for the business because they can change if they need to.
So let's ask a funny question, Eric. Why do you perceive that some people might not think they want an open system?
We got to blame Steve Jobs for that.
Maybe.
Because, that's the only counter argument to it is, Mac is not, quote unquote, a real open system, right?
Right.
And, when Mac's on, the quality's been really, really good.
Yep.
And, and I'm happy with my Macs, but it's expensive.
Yep.
And when they don't deliver, you really don't have a great choice. Whereas if you go with a Linux or whatever system, you have choice. People are constantly building on it. So, I think if you got a really, if Apple ever develops a proprietary building automation control system, I might consider it.
You might.
But past that, probably not.
I think one of the things that people worry about a little bit sometimes, though, is you start talking open, and they think, oh, all the doors are open. Is it safe? Is it a secure environment for me to be in?
Are you talking about cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's a great question.
So I think that is one of the things that people worry about, and everyone has kind of heard about major retailers that have maybe had some breaches through some of their electronic systems, and people worry a lot about what am I doing when I bring electronic systems, and if I start tying a lot of different things together, am I increasing my risk?
Yeah. Great point.
What do you think, Joel? How are we trying to address that while still being an open system?
Yeah, it's a good point. So for example, this tech controller, we are using the latest Linux as an operating system, which means that we do not do by ourselves the cybersecurity, but we use the latest version of Linux, which is one of the most used operating system, to be sure that all the potential threat or whatever are fixed. Because we are using the community to be sure that we have the best product to do it.
That's a good point, Joel. So if I'm going to take and I'm going to make a new electronic system today, and I want to lock it down as much as I can, that means that I need to hire new programmers. I'm going to write my own thing that does this, and my own thing that does that, and my own thing that does this. And now if a security bug comes up, I've got a I'm going to hire a programmer to write for my proprietary language. If you go about designing your system to be as open as possible, now you can take whatever the best in class that's already there, that's available, and you can embrace existing best practices around embracing that security. So you mentioned that we're based on a Linux operating system. That means that it's not on us to fix those breaches.
Yeah, just as a small story, as you probably know, because you were discussing about Apple, I think Apple is one of the last companies that didn't move to Chromium. So you know that there is Chrome with Chromium, Edge, Microsoft, we moved to Chromium. And what is the reason for that? For cybersecurity, because it's better to invest once and to share. And this is what we are doing with Linux. We are using probably one of the most cyber secure based that is evolving.
Okay, I'm going to put the warning on the open controls box. Okay, this is the warning for all you owners at home. It's critical because you've got all these tools and you can be more susceptible. So there's a concept that sort of has developed. And I'm going to give a shout out to your partners, your installers, and other major manufacturers have them too. You guys put your installers through really, really serious paces. Cybersecurity is part of it. So if you're an owner and you're looking to go for an open system, you really need to look at your integrator. And typically you have a master systems integrator now. Since open systems have come and more systems are connected, you need to have somebody that's sort of responsible for the overall thing. And cybersecurity is a key piece that you need to make sure that they are taken care of for you. And guys, I know you put your integrators through all kinds of training, and I mean, you have very high standards for your integrators.
Absolutely.
So let's speak about that a little bit too, because you can have a great product that's open, but if the people that are installing it are not trained properly and are not world-class integrators, then you could be opening yourself for some hurt.
I tell people all the time when I go and meet a new customer that when I bring on a Distech system integrator in my territory, I tell them that the biggest criteria for me is, are you willing to take this job knowing that the only reason that customer should do another job with you is that you did it right, and if you made mistakes, you came in and made it right afterwards.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting business model because everyone kind of says that that's the business model they want, but it's not really. We've collected a group of outstanding contractors across the world that really fit that business model because it's the only way they can be successful with an open system. If you put something in and you kind of mess it up, they're not going to come back to you. They're going to go to somebody else because they can. That puts us in a situation where our contractors have to go through the level of expertise and training that we demand of them just to be successcyl in business, because otherwise they wouldn't be able to be successful.
Yeah, having a great product isn't enough, right, Joe?
No, it's all the people.
And I think it's important to remember that cybersecurity is an end-to-end process, a never-ending process, which means that you need always to be trained, you need always to update the latest firmware, because nobody can claim we are cyber secure. This is not true, because it's a complete cycle that has to be redo very frequently.
So there's a lot of value to all of these different systems that we're attempting to start bringing into our buildings and interacting with. And owners are seeing that value. But it really is, the key to it is building what we like to refer to as a future-ready infrastructure. And that future-ready infrastructure is to take off all of the unnecessary locks that get in the way and leave only the ones there that keep your assets safe.
So let's talk about what advice, what are owners typically asking you guys for now, and what advice would you give owners that are maybe thinking about upgrading their system?
That's a great question. It's a great question. Joel works in our product management, and I know he spends a lot of time thinking about this. This is we spend a tremendous amount of time in R&D trying to figure out what owners really want and need. Why don't you take a stab, Joel?
Yeah, so I think we are looking more and more new usage. And so what we want to provide is more and more openness in order to provide more collaboration with others company. We cannot be good at everything, for sure. So our goal is really to provide the best HVAC controller with enough openness and power resources in order to collaborate with other companies that provide new usage that they can use on our system.
When you guys are one of the few companies now that has sort of applied the whole concept of an IP controller. Talk about IP controllers versus
Sure.
BACnet and
I told you that I spent the first part of my career sitting on a bucket, right? And sometimes I wasn't on a bucket. Sometimes I was in my office on a 19.2 modem trying to program a system, and it was painful. It was really, really slow. And we ended up in that situation 20 years ago because, computer parts were expensive. I remember the first time I upgraded the memory in my computer at home, I spent hundreds of dollars, and I might have added 16K worth of memory to that. But we've gotten to the point where technology has gotten inexpensive enough that there's really no reason that we can't be designing our electronic systems around all of the best practices that are out there in the space. And that includes IP communication technology.
Yeah, and I will say that what is important is, again, to provide flexibility. So flexibility regarding the architecture, because each building is different, each owner needs is different. And so what is important is to be able to be flexible enough to provide the solutions that really fits their needs.
And I've seen a lot of other technologies moving in that direction. I mean, if we were to go back 15 years, people were rolling out IP telephony, right? And you started doing voice over, and it seemed really weird at the time. We were all kind of, oh gosh, what are they doing? And they're not running the little cables anymore, they're running the bigger ones. But you're gonna see IP-based fire alarm systems. We already have IP-based security and camera systems. We have IP-based building automation systems now. One of the amazing pieces to that is that we've come enough into the world of IT that we have excellent best practices about how we design and implement those systems. It's very, very important in the building automation space that as we move into that IP space, we start embracing all of those best practices. If you don't try and lock your system down, you can just grab and embrace all of these best practices. If you're trying to lock it, it can be a little hard to do that.
Well, and I think too, what makes you guys really interesting is people used to think of, well, you got the building automation control system and then you got everything else.
Yeah.
And you guys early on sort of embraced, because your alliance with Acuity, for example, the lighting company, where you guys were doing stuff like, changing the lighting as people walked into a particular space, or even you could send a coupon or something if somebody was there. You could monitor dwell times, integrating these systems together to create, it's more than just heating and air conditioning now, guys. It's so much more you can do. And we're just starting this whole integration process, right, with all this stuff. What are some things? Mitch, you're a science fiction guy. What do you envision being incorporated, 4 or 5 years from now?
We're rolling out our first flying car next year, Eric. I promise. It'll be the new Distech Fly. No, of course not. But we're all waiting for the flying car to come along.
You might not be, but Elon Musk is.
Maybe. No. For us, the acquisition of Distech Controls by Acuity Brands was all about one phrase: occupant experience. Right? We recognized that the people occupying the spaces are the most valuable assets that anybody has. It's not about your business. It's not about the doodads and the widgets that you make. It's about the people that are in those spaces. And occupant experience is driven by exactly what you're talking about. When I walk into my home can tell that I walked in. I've got a Nest thermostat on the wall that turns the temperature up. I can use my voice to turn on the TV. I can use my voice to change the channel. We were woefully behind in the constructed space in catching up with that technology. Acuity Brands and Distech Controls is all about driving that technology to try and bring that same comfort that you have in your home into your office space, or into your hospital space, or into your educational space. We know that those simple things, temperature, light, they can dramatically affect the amount of knowledge retention that a fifth grade student is getting in a class. They can dramatically affect the healing time of a patient that's living in a hospital room. That's a big part of what we're trying to do.
Well, it's circadian rhythms, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So Joel, you talk to a lot of customers a lot. Typically people go, okay, how much does the system cost? How much energy is it going to save? And energy is a component of it. I look at energy saving sort of being the icing on the cake now. Operational efficiencies and productivity. In other words, if I own a building, I could say, hey, I got this system in and we're doing the circadian rhythms. Your people are going to be 30% more productive. You're going to have less sick time. I mean, those are value propositions that an open system can bring, an owner can bring to his tenants, correct?
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, you have, the rules of 3, 30, and 300, and even 3,000. So, of course, energy is mandatory, but everybody is here now. Then after, it's about renting the good spaces, no more, no less, and providing the good comfort. And after, provide the best productivity environment in order that occupants make the most of their day. because this is really, as I say, Mitch, where is the real value?
Joel, if you would, for our viewers that might not know what the $300 rule is, do you mind telling them what that is real quick?
Yeah, so in fact, there is a rule that say that if you are spending $3 as energy for a square feet, let's say to heat or to cool 1 square feet, you will spend 30 to rent and 300 to occupy.
Yeah. So if you can get a 10% effectiveness on that $300 spend versus the 3, you're doing some stuff, right?
Much better to spend time on occupation. Yeah.
Right. And many of the things that we talk about in the occupant experience, it's not rocket science to imagine that you might want the lights to come on when you walk into a space. The real and we've been able to do it at home for a while. The real problem has been these locks that have been in place as these people have built kingdoms around their systems. The use cases, the ideas behind how this stuff should come together, all of us have been able to think of these things for 20 years. I remember doing jobs 20 years ago where they wanted me to do that, but it was prohibitively expensive to make it happen because I had to buy this box that translated this protocol and unlocked this aspect, and I get it all working, and heaven forbid, 3 years later, they want to make a change. Oh, the cost to doing that. That, to me, is where open systems are really creating opportunities where business owners, where building owners can think big about how they want to impact their occupants and do it in a way that isn't cost prohibitive, do it in a way that's sustainable and that they can see their return on investment.
Well, you guys own an... Go ahead, Joel.
Sorry, yeah. Another thing which is important about open system, if you think about, we will move as humanity to more electrical vehicles, for sure, and it will mean that we will have to take care. It will mean that we will have to take care of the energy load and so on. And if you think about that. We have a smart building, which is part of a smart city, which is part of a smart grid. And everybody should be able to communicate each other to offer, I will say, the most optimum usage of energy.
Absolutely. And so if we've talked about how hard it can be to just have my air conditioning talk to my lights within one building, what are we going to get when we try and get 10 or 100 or 200 buildings all to talk to each other and share information in order to be able to efficiently manage a smart grid? Joel is absolutely on. Open systems are key to the future of the energy infrastructure in this country because we have to be able to share that data in order to be able to make intelligent decisions.
Well, and I think what's going on, guys, is people come back, to work. Yep. A couple of things are going to happen. First of all, people are going to know the building's safe. Yep. Right, so we're going to have to be able to monitor things like indoor air quality. You guys have another company that does analytics. We haven't mentioned them yet. Yep. That you guys work with, so that when people walk into a building, they can see how safe the building is. Right, you're monitoring, and part of the system can alert if we're not getting enough air changes or whatever. But as we come back into the space, another trend, Joel, that we've been seeing is the owners. If you're leasing a space, you want to be able to easily maybe, share spaces, right? So something like hoteling, which is a relatively new term.
Absolutely.
So Mitch and I, both wanted a corner office, and Joel got it, but Joel's not at work all the time now. So Mitch and I can go on our app through our open system, and we can schedule. We're going to use Joel's office on Friday, and Mitch is going to use it on Thursday. So you guys are getting a lot of those type requests as well, right?
Yes, exactly. So I think from a commercial office, we will move to what we call flex office, which is having no more, because most of people will, after the pandemic, will continue to telework at least two days, which means that you don't need so many spaces. You need less spaces, and you won't have your own desk, but you will have an application that will tell you what is the closest desk available. You can book it. Then after, of course, you will have it for the time you are on the building. And probably until the pandemic will be totally gone, we will have people that will take care to be sure that everything is clean and ready for the next person. And so we are working on that, and we have the smart room control infrastructure, which allows to do this kind of scenarios.
Worse. I think one of the things that we haven't talked about yet is from a building owner's perspective, one of the things that's really important to them is the value of their asset, not just as a rental property, but they're going to want to sell this at some point. From my perspective, a building that is built around an open, future-ready infrastructure is worth more than a building that isn't. And that's something that I think that we, as an industry, have failed to communicate effectively to the people who are making those decisions. And we're kind of all on the hook for that right now. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Say more about that if you would, Joe. What do you think?
And I think it's a good point because, especially the hospitality market right now is really hardly hit. But however, they would like to propose, and it makes sense, especially big cities where people are living in a small apartment, they would like to propose a guest room as offices for 8 hours or these kind of things. And if you have an open system, you can change that quite easily, and you can make your guest room booking system and so on. If you are a proprietary system, it becomes a nightmare to do it.
Yeah, and again, I think it gets back to the difference between open and proprietary. It's not you can't do some of these things with proprietary, it just can get really, really expensive because we get back to our favorite word when it comes to open systems, guys, the big C word, choice.
Choice, yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the interesting things that I like to talk about in the context of open systems and future-ready infrastructure, I love to talk about a long time ago, somewhere in Apple's R&D offices, because you like Apple, so we'll talk about Apple for a second. And there were a bunch of smart people hanging around in a room one day, and they were all trying to figure out how they're going to make their next fortune, right? And they had made this cool thing, and it was called the iPod. Right? And we all, maybe you didn't have one, maybe you're not young enough for that, but I had an iPod. But they had just spent a lot of time making this iPod. They had done, they'd optimized it. It had, the most songs you could keep on it, and the quality of the output was good, and the battery life was good, and their occupant experience, their interface was great. That's how Apple made all their money. But people were coming out with competition, and they said, well, how do we get the next thing? And somebody in that space said, it's a cool idea. What if your iPod made phone calls and browsed the internet too?
Wow.
Cool idea, right?
Great idea.
But the interesting part of this story is that what nobody said that day? Nobody stood up and said, great idea. You know what else is going to be awesome? Uber. Uber's going to be awesome. Because they couldn't have imagined Uber.
Yeah.
But Uber's pretty awesome, right?
Right.
I have no idea what the Uber of buildings is going to be 5 years from now. Yeah. But I know that if you don't put in an open system, you're probably not going to get it. Right. The secret to the success behind what Apple did with their smartphones is they created an open infrastructure where other people could develop content for that infrastructure. Right. That's a huge part of what we're trying to do as well.
No, absolutely. Well, there's another movie, Field of Dreams. There was a line called, if you build it, they will come, right?
Yep.
And I think that's it. I mean, if you're looking at building I love the way you keep talking about building your structure and future-proofing it.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's a key piece. So if, as we sort of wrap up here, if you were, you're a building owner, yep, what are the questions you're asking either your engineer or your integrator that's trying to sell you a system? Give me the 3 or 4 must questions you must ask and how they need to be answered for you to know that you're getting the right system.
The biggest question for me is, how are you choosing the vendor who's going to supply this system?
No. I'm the owner.
Oh, yeah.
No, you're the owner.
Yeah, I'm the owner.
I'm coming in. What questions as an owner do you need to ask to assure that that's happening?
Let's bounce that off Joel.
All right, Joel.
So
Mitch and I are here selling you a system.
Renovation to do. I will say, please select something that make me future ready and future proof in order that if something happens in the next 5 years that I need to move, I don't have to redo everything from scratch.
Okay, well, great. I have a system, and you can move my system. We talk BACnet, so we're open.
Yeah. BACnet's the way to go.
Yeah, it's the way to go. It's open. I mean, read ASHRAE.
So how do we guide that building owner away from fake open to truly open?
Yes, we cannot have any fake open.
Right. Because there's a lot of open theater going on out there.
Yes.
So I think it's all about the collaboration with the IT companies, so which are not really in buildings, but however, which are providing digital service and big values for tenant and occupant. Because in fact, the goal is really that we we can provide the same level of services that what you have at home today.
Well, I want to be the owner. You guys sell me a system. I'm going to ask you guys some really tough
Okay,
questions.
sure, go ahead.
See if you can stump the open guy. I'm the owner, you're selling me. Okay, first question. What protocols do you guys talk?
From our perspective, we're going to speak any of the open protocols that are established on the market.
Cool. How many people can install the system for me? How many people can I get quotes from for your equipment?
Based on the size of the market, but we try and set up enough vendors in any particular market so that the end users have choice. Interesting to us, most of the customers don't ever take advantage of that choice because the people that we put in place have to perform at an exceptional level that in giving them that choice, they never have to exercise it.
Cool. Can my staff, can they get training on the same training on the product that my installer will get?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, they can. Okay. And can I get the same tools that's not costing me the price of the printer ink you tried to sell me last week?
Yeah. Our tools, every single one of our controllers is all programmed with one tool for everything, and that tool has always been freely available. We don't charge for it.
Very cool. So I'm feeling pretty comfortable with these guys. Can our audience vote? Should we buy Mitch's system or should we get a bid from Joel, who is saying that he's using an Apple phone and he charges $100 for his printer ink? But I think if you go through those questions, and of course another great question is, what's on the product roadmap? Where do you guys see your system in 5 years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's Joel's whole job. Why don't we ask him?
Yeah. Joel, where do you see your system in 5 years?
So I can say that we are working on our new generation of Eclipse that we'll call Eclipse Building Intelligence, which will come with a brand new range of controllers. The very good point is that Building Intelligence will run on the existing Eclipse controllers. And this is part of the openness, which means that when we deliver something, we continue to support it. So there is no disruption on that. And so the big thing that we will provide in the next couple of months is a controller with really IT capabilities. So I will use just some buzzwords. I don't think we have time, but IoT Edge, Docker, and TensorFlow processor. So we will be able to make machine learning and artificial intelligence on the controller.
So if I'm an owner and Joel is telling me this, the takeaway I'm getting is, I don't know what he's talking about, but it sounds like it's backward compatible and they're thinking about the future. So he gets thumbs up for me with that.
The nice thing for me is if you're the owner, I want you in the room helping me make this decision, but I also want your director of IT in the room, right? And having been in this role in the past, I can tell you 10 years ago when I came in and the director of IT was in the room, I thought, oh no. Because back then we were selling somewhat proprietary systems and the IT guy wasn't going to understand. Joel threw out some buzzwords. The IT guy knows those words. We're moving into his space now, and those people can now help guide building owners because we can embrace those technologies that they're already comfortable with. And that's really powerful.
We are bringing the hub of the building, which is bridging the best of OT world and IT world.
And when Joel says that, he means information technology that we've all been very comfortable with, and operational technology. When I talk about your fire alarm and your lights and your security systems and your HVAC systems all moving to an Ethernet-based communication system, we're talking about your operational technology network. And I love to imagine you've got a building. Your lights and your air conditioning is pervasive through your building. There's lights in here. There's air conditioning in here. Your lights and your air conditioning is like the circulatory system and the nervous system of your building. It's everywhere. And the more we start embracing future-ready systems, the more we're going to start being able to use that infrastructure as the sensory network that lets us gather data and do interesting things and affect those occupants in meaningful ways.
All right, well, there you go. That's the inaugural episode of DCTV, brought to you by the folks at Distech Controls. Special thanks to Mitch Day and Joel Desiree. We really appreciate it. Hey, next episode, is your building trustworthy? Is it healthy? Tune into the next episode and find out. Until then, remember, be bold, stay in control, stay relevant, and have a great day.
Thanks, Eric.
Boom, 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 boom. Magic abracadabra. The proud folks at DCTV have transported me and Mitch and Joel to our own studios for question and answer time. And guys, we got some questions lined up. We'll try to get to as many of them as we can. And I'm going to hop right in, fellas. First one. And this is one I hear a lot, and I suspect you do too, Joel and Mitch, which is, I've got Niagara. Isn't that enough for me to have an open system? Mitch, you go first with this one. What do you think?
You know, Eric, I hear that a lot, and I've spent a lot of my career meeting with consulting engineers, and it's not just necessarily the end users that think that. There's a lot of times that engineers who have every intention of trying to help their customers get to a truly open system maybe still get stuck on that point. And I'll answer generally, Niagara Tritium is a really good tool. It can be used in a really effective way to begin opening up your system. But there are pieces of Tritium that can be implemented in ways that get in the way of a truly open system. So Niagara is an open framework, but it can be applied in ways that don't give you the openness that you really want. So one of the things that we look for is a NICS statement, NICS, and that is a Niagara Interoperability Compliance Statement. What that does is it says that if you buy a Niagara device from me, and you buy a Niagara device from Joel, maybe he's a different manufacturer, that those two devices, if they both have a fully open NICS statement, that means that we can communicate freely with each other. From a Distech perspective, we have never sold a device that did not come with an open NICS statement, but many other Niagara-friendly vendors do sell a product that must be unlocked at very expensive options in order to be able to interoperate with other people's systems. Like we said earlier as well, programming tools can be a real problem with some Niagara-based systems. So you have to be careful. Niagara is a great start. We are big fans of Niagara. We were one of the very first OEM partners with Niagara, but it doesn't unlock all the doors for you.
Well, Joel, I mean, sorry, Mitch, I just want to stop there for a minute because this is such a key piece. You can order, and this is a question you want to ask your vendor. Does it have the open NICS statement? If it does, if it doesn't, then if I'm going to use your product, you have to send me JASEs that have the open NICS statement in it, right? And if they're going to charge you an arm and a leg for that, then you might want to reconsider because it's not expensive. I mean, it's a software tweak that they just do before they send the JASE out, right? So my point being, you got to have the open NICS. That's a really good point.
And that really, from an end user perspective, they really need to push their consulting engineer, if they're going to design around Niagara, to put that in their specification and hold everybody to the fire on it. It's very easy for that to slip by. And sometimes you might not notice for 5, 6, 7 years. And then you want to try and do something new with your system. And you realize that you've got thousands and thousands of dollars of expenses to really unlock it the way you thought you did in the first place.
Right. And it's so much more expensive to unlock it after the fact. But, if you order it with an open, I mean, they got them on the shelf that way, right? So it's not that hard to do. And several of the vendors that are what I would say is more proprietary, they'll ship them out that way. Unless you specify it and insist upon it and check it, you're most likely going to wind up thinking you have an open system when you just have a closed system. So obviously, that's one of the key components there. Does it talk an open protocol? If you're ordering Niagara, does it have an open NICS statement? What are some of the other things, guys, that we talked about that you want to make sure you have?
So I will say that about the openness, what is important is that all the documentation is available for free, is always available, whatever you are under maintenance or under contract or not under contract. And that you can continue to use this openness even though after a few years of use, so that this openness continue to exist too.
Well, I want to review real quick too. The other things we talked about is, obviously talks open protocol. Second, open source. Do you have multiple people that can install your system and work on it? Correct. And then the third, can you get the open tools? Can you get the same tools, the programming tools? And another one, guys, that we didn't talk about that sort of is coming to light is The other question you want to ask is who owns the data, right? Because data has been called the new gold.
And I want to back off on that a little bit, Eric. It's not that everybody can buy your product. We are very, very careful to make sure that the people who are installing Distech, who are partners of ours, are all highly qualified, highly trained, and have the full backing of the factory. So we try and sit in the middle. I don't want any Tom, Dick, and Harry going out and putting something in, because this isn't a simple industry. You know, all of us that have been here for a while, you have to have the right training and the right commitment to excellence. So we set up the right number of people.
And
No,
Eric,
you make so much sense, Joe.
Yeah, Eric, you raised a good point regarding who owns the data. Clearly, it should be the property owner that owns the data, because this is the data of his building, which means that for us, at least, it's important to respect the privacy. And so it's up to the building owner to select where he wants the data to be put, how secure he wants the data to be. And of course, it's our role to provide all the means to provide this cybersecurity and all the gold to link this data to the right place.
Very good.
Absolutely.
And great stuff there. Before moving on to the next question, Mitch, you hit on a great point, which is if the system's too open, meaning if you can buy it on Amazon or at Home Depot, you're probably not going to want it's a little too open with that. So you want to make sure that you have qualified, factory trained and certified people to do your installation. And I know at Distech, you guys put, a lot of time and effort in making sure that your installers are qualified. So
Absolutely.
next question, guys. And Mitch, Joel, we'll start with you on this one. So what sort of background does somebody really need to have to sort of get involved with Distech controls?
Yeah, it's a very good question and great question. So if we take our main product line, which is the Eclipse, I really would recommend that more and more, if you want to hire a new person in your team, to get people that have a real IT background. Of course, they need to be very knowledgeable regarding the operation technology, backnet and so on. But even though it will be even better to be very knowledgeable on the IT side, because more and more we can see these two worlds converging. And so if you want to bring more data and be more differentiated on the market, you will have more and more to make the connection between the OT world, so again, operation technology, and the IT world. And so an ideal candidate, I will say, should be able to be very fluent with Docker technology, with the cloud technology, with RESTful API, and all these kind of cool things that we are seeing more and more, and that allows to do more and more things. Not only, I would say, during operation, but even though during the deployment of the product, if you want to update the certificate, the digital certificate, and so on. So it will help a lot customer, and it will allow, I would say, to be more productive.
Joel just hit it right on the head. It's a matter of the people that a system integrator hires is incredibly important right now. And when I first took this job, I had an opportunity to meet a lot of different system integrators all over the eastern part of the United States. And I would meet them and I would have some of the same conversations. I would say, 10 years from now, we're going to look backwards and discover that there were lots of system integrators, and they're going to fall into two categories. There are people who have been doing this a long time who can't see the way the industry is going, and they're going to become air conditioning vendors, right? And then there are people who get it and start bringing in these new technologies. They are the future master systems integrators in our space. And bringing those IT skills and embracing that idea of future-ready technology and open technology, that's the key. And hiring the right people to do that is really important. That's one of the things that I talk about the most with my system integrators is how do they bring on the right staff? How do they retain them and train them and incentivize them to do great work?
Very, very good. Well, listen, guys, I think we got time for one more, and this is a good question. Here's the question, guys. Is Distech headed in a direction towards a less open environment with the inclusions of products like the S1000 implemented without a JACE and licensing of productivity enhancing tools? Is Distech headed back towards a more of a single vendor environment?
Let me start off with that one, Eric, because that's a great question, and we hear that a lot. I'll tell you right off the bat that all of our product roadmap right now always will embrace the idea of being a Niagara-centric solution. We love our Niagara-Tritium relationship, and we're not moving in a direction where we want to move away from that. That's been a great relationship for us for a long time. The questioner asks about our small building solution, where you can group together small amounts of Distech controllers without a Jace and without a Niagara head end. This is a really powerful solution, not to go around Niagara, but to get controls in a space where people perhaps weren't using a building automation system in the past. Really, this is us trying to open up the buildings market and take away a simple programmable thermostat that was on the wall and bring some intelligence in the space. What I love the most about that solution, maybe I own a small retail store and I buy a couple controllers and I put them together and I'm really successful, and maybe I open up 7 or 8 more small retail stores. And now I start bringing all of these stores together. Now I need Niagara, and I'm going to start bringing together all of that information into one place. The last question about our productivity enhancing tools is also really, really important. We put a tremendous amount of R&D into making the job of the system integrator faster, more efficient, better, and closer to their own excellence. And we have to figure out some way to control our own technology and make sure that that technology is being used as best it can with Distech contractors. We can license our tools on anybody's Jace and put those in. Likewise, our controllers can be programmed without the use of those tools. There's nothing locked about it, nothing preventing anyone from using our controllers in an open Niagara environment. We simply provide those tools because the excellent contractors that we've used deserve those tools to be able to get on and off the job as quickly as possible. And if other people want to use them, I would encourage them to give us a call and have a conversation about becoming a Distech contractor themselves. Many of our contractors love us so much because of those productivity enhancing tools.
Well, Joel, I'm going to give you the final word here, but I think to me, philosophically, I'm looking at this. Single vendor and open to me are two different things, meaning that, if your system's open and you're the vendor because you're the best vendor, your customer is still at choice to add different things on if they want to. They're not being excluded. So I think any vendor worth their salt wants to be the single vendor, the sole provider. I mean, if you didn't, then I would question, your commitment to the industry. But I think what I read into this is, we want to be a single vendor. We want to be your only vendor. We want to earn the business, but we're going to have our system open in such a way that you have choice. Agree or disagree, Joel?
Fully agree. I think to have the best result is to make the collaboration with the best-in-class company. As Distech, we know that we cannot do everything. So we are establishing partnership with other companies in order to provide complete solution to our customers. And
Very,
the
very
openness
cool.
is the right way to do it.
Openness is in our DNA, Eric. We have been built on the foundation of commitment to open systems for 26 years now from the very first day. So the questions are great, but we're not going to move off that standard anytime in the near future.
Very, very cool, guys. Well, listen, I think that wraps us up right here. Those were the people that had other questions. We're sorry we couldn't get to them today, but the folks at DCTV are very mindful of your time. We appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next time on the next episode of DCTV. Guys, thanks so much. It's been real, and it's been fun, and it's been real fun. So remember, all you folks out there, make sure you're at choice when it comes to your system. Make sure it's open. Hopefully this has helped. If you like it, reach out to the folks at DCTV and tell them good job. You want more of it. If you don't like them, well, I'm still paying for divorces. So you guys please like it, because I need this gig. You guys take care. Have a good one. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Charles.
Bye.
Bye-bye.